In 1990, I was the England reporter with ITV, and that gave me fantastic access. We stayed in the team hotel. The players used to come round and watch the matches with us. I mean, access that just does not happen today. You're not allowed, as a TV man or as any sort of journalist, to get as close to the England football team as I did.
What was the atmosphere around the England team in the build-up to the tournament?
In the build-up to 1990, there was unrest, really, because it was a pretty open secret that the FA were not going to offer Bobby Robson a new contract. It was a pretty open secret that he was on his way to PSV Eindhoven in Holland, and that overshadowed the whole tournament, really, the build-up to the tournament. And they were wary. The whole England team were wary about the media, etc., etc. And also, there was this huge black cloud looming over Italia 90 of England hooliganism. And for that reason, the fear of England hooligans, England were put in what was deemed to be this horrible island called Sardinia. They were banished there, as one or two headlines read. And England had to play in Sardinia. There was massive police presence. I think it was 8,000 carabinieri there, special military forces, all this stuff, to control the threat of the England fans. When I got to Sardinia, we were billeted in this luxurious hotel called the Forte Village, and it was the height of luxury. It was absolutely beautiful. England had a superb base as well. The training pitches were superb. And if that's banishment to Sardinia, everybody would take it. Sardinia was just absolutely beautiful. We had a real problem with hooligans in that time. And I wouldn't even call them football fans. I wouldn't even call them football supporters. Basically, thousands of people had gone to Europe to cause trouble. And their lifeblood had been that whichever country they went to, whether it wasn't just with England, it was club matches as well, all that country wanted to do was get them out, get them back to England, get them out. They didn't want to catch them, they didn't want to convict them, and they didn't want to have them in their prisons. And so this problem festered on and festered on. And there were real fears at the very highest level. Colin Moynihan, the Minister for Sport, was speaking about, and didn't do anybody any favours actually, by building this up into a massive problem that had to be eradicated. I don't think it was that, but he certainly fanned the flames, and it was difficult. And for the genuine England football fan, of which there were thousands, they were put in a very difficult position, because you had the choice of going to support your team and your country, and you also knew that you could be lumped in with the hooligans and treated very, very badly. The relationship between players and media has always been very, very tricky. And the tabloid press, there's a massive tabloid war going on at that stage between the Sun and the Mirror, and they just wanted to top each other with sensational stories. In the middle of this, were the England team at a World Cup, players and manager, and they were deeply suspicious of everything that they said. I hate making a differential between TV and the written press, but in Italia 90, there was a big difference, and I think the players felt more comfortable looking down a camera and saying things, knowing that they were going to be accurately represented. It wasn't a pleasant atmosphere. Interestingly, if you fast forward it to these days and the sort of vilification that players get every day on social media, etc., they might just have said, settle for 99. I think it wasn't that bad then, because some of the stuff that comes their way now is absolutely brutal in comparison to what they got in 1990. Bobby Robson was an absolute joy to deal with, because he had utmost sympathy with everybody else's problems. He was with us. He was just always going out of his way to be accommodating. TV technology was just really starting to explode then, and we had the ability, which people would take for granted now, to go live from the England camp, put it live on television. It was relatively new technology then, and Bobby did absolutely everything that we asked for. And when he looked down the lens and spoke to the English public, everybody liked him. And I think that was Bobby's secret, that he had to deal with some of the most awkward players imaginable, not that particularly in that England squad, but throughout his club career. And every player played for Bobby. And he had this great ability to blend a team, to pull people together, despite having difficult and awkward characters. I remember Bobby in Italia with that lovely grey suit that he wore throughout, and he was so sad. He was the ultimate patriot, was Bobby, and until his death, he knew that England had come back close, so close to pulling it all off. And I think there might have been a bit of a sadness in him in Italia 90 because he knew it was over. He knew it was over. He knew his England 8-year England reign was over as well. But of all the people that I've met in football, I would put Bobby Robson top of the tree. Paul Gascoigne, daft as a brush, and that was on his good days. He is an absolute one-off, a player probably up there as the best, one of the best players that England have ever produced. From our TV perspective, if you were doing an interview and it got interrupted, you knew who it was going to be. It was Gazza. If there was a rule to be broken, he would break it. Paul Gascoigne was a hyperactive insomniac throughout 1990. Not the best mode of behaviour when you're trying to win a World Cup. I don't know when he slept, but he didn't sleep very often. The England hotel was a couple of miles away from ours. He would borrow a bike, come down to ours in the middle of the night, play squash and play tennis with unsuspecting night duty waiters and other tourists. He discovered saunas during Italia 90. And on the morning of the game, came down and spoke to Bobby Robson. Gazza said, boss, have you ever had a sauna? And Bobby said, yes, I've had one or two. They're wonderful, aren't they? He said, yes, they're very relaxing. I had 4.5 hours in one last night, and they were playing that afternoon. And I think Bobby very rapidly accepted that there was a law for the rest of the squad, and there was a law for Gazza. Actually, there wasn't a law for Gazza because he was totally lawless. But let me tell you, on the pitch, for me, Italia 90 was Gazza's finest hours. He was, what he did there on the pitch, carrying the ball, his passing, his work rate, he was absolutely outstanding. And as well as being instrumental in a lot of the England goals as well. And I think people saw Gazza, they empathised with him. When he came back, they had a wonderful reception. Gazza was at the focal point of it all. As a human being, he was at his happiest when he played football. When the whistle went and he came off the pitch, 1 or 2 troubles and 1 or 2 demons surfaced for Paul Gascoigne. He was happiest on a football pitch and he was at his best in Italia 90. My recollection of the first game between England and Big Jack's Republic of Ireland, the first time they'd got to a World Cup, where there was an almighty row about who was going to do the post-match interview. And the BBC dug their heels in and ITV dug their heels in as well. And we had to have a Danish guy, Fritz Alstrom was called in to do a pretty ordinary couple of interviews, if I'm honest, with Bobby Robson and Jack Charlton. On the pitch, England against the Republic of Ireland was probably akin to a championship game today. There was hardly any football played at all. Probably suited Big Jack rather more than it suited Bobby. It was a 1-1 draw, and I think the national Italian paper, La Repubblica, summed it up when they said, a big headline the next day, England, is that all you've got? Thankfully it wasn't. England have a habit of starting very, very slowly in World Cup, and won a piece against the Republic in Cagliari. It was a slow start by anyone's standards. I think England was still formulating the best way to play, how to get the best out of that particular group. It was a slow start, but at least it wasn't a losing start. At least something had been taken from that game. But it did, of course, mean that there was a fair bit of pressure to deliver in the rest of those group games in Sardinia. Otherwise, the World Cup was going to be a very short adventure indeed.
We were better against Holland. Do you remember that game?
I remember the Holland game because they were seen as the biggest test in the group. I remember Gazza's influence in that Holland game, and there was a pickup as well, an improvement. And the system was interesting as well in that Bobby, I believe my memory serves me right, spoke to the players, and this got misconstrued by the tabloids as saying the players would pick the team and pick the formation. Bobby always believed in getting the players' views and then making his decision. That's what he did there. It was a change in formation. I think Mark Wright with a nice ball playing centre half. He was getting more involved. Gazza got very much involved, more involved as well. And the Holland game was a step up.
So we qualified from the group. Did you get a sense around the team that they were relaxing into the tournament a little more now?
That group was always a special group of people, and again during the World Cup, Bobby had always stressed how keen he was to have a family spirit and for people to enjoy themselves. We had a race night, would you believe, during that World Cup, where the Derby in early June, and again, forget today's technology. You couldn't see it. If you're in Italy, you couldn't see the Derby, but Thames Television were doing it. We piped it through. I think Pat Edery rode the winner, and there we were, surrounded by the England team, watching the Derby. We had a book, I think one or two shenanigans went on there, and a few people got caught very badly on that book, but that's another story. But again, just take a step back. A TV company with a TV reporter with an England team gambling, watching the Derby during a World Cup. Decent little coup that, you know.